Your brother has a career." My mother said it with her hand clamped around my wrist, the wrist already going purple, while my father drove us 40 minutes to the ER, 26 years a deputy in that county, and he would not call an ambulance for his own daughter. An hour earlier, Wade had grabbed me in our parents' kitchen and swung me into the edge of the counter. 9 people heard it over the potluck. Not one stood up. In the back seat, my mother rehearsed me like a script. "You fell. Say you fell down the stairs." She wasn't angry. She said it smooth. 31 years old, and I said exactly what she wanted. I didn't fight them that night. I just kept my phone in my good hand, the one holding the voicemail Wade left at 2:07 that morning. If you're still here after that, do me a favor and hit the like button and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I want to know how many of you are hearing this at 2 in the morning, because 2 in the morning is where this whole thing started. My name is Thea Ingram. I'm 31 years old. I'm a paralegal. I've worked for the District Public Defender's Office for 6 years, out of the Kettle County branch, 1 county over from where I grew up, and my whole job is paper, discovery, records requests, chain of custody, reading a police report at 4 in the afternoon, and finding the sentence that doesn't match the sentence on page 9. I am very good at it. I am good at it in a way that has nothing to do with being brave. I tell you that now because I want you to understand what I was, sitting in that back seat. I was a woman who knew exactly what a lie in a medical chart does. I knew it gets a timestamp. I knew it gets an author. I knew it becomes the version of the night that outlives everybody in the car. And I said it anyway. So let me take you back about 11 hours to a yard full of American flags on the 4th of July. It was the country's 250th birthday, and my mother had bought bunting for the porch rail. The farmhouse sits at 1402 County Road 9, 40 minutes of gravel and dry grass from anything with a stoplight. Every truck in the family was parked nose to tail down the drive, and by 4 o'clock there were coolers in the shade and cornhole boards in the side yard and a folding table sagging under 9 kinds of casserole. My aunt brought her chairs. My cousins brought their kids. 11 adults, if you count me, and I do. I'd driven out with one thing to say, and I said it in the kitchen with the door open because I'd learned a long time ago not to say hard things to my brother in a room with a closed door. I told Wade I wasn't putting my name on his truck anymore. That's it. That's the whole crime. 2 years ago, when his credit was a smoking hole, I signed for the loan on his F250, and I let the title carry my name. And every month I watched the bank take the payment out of my account, and every month I watched him not pay me back. In June, he stopped answering. So on the 4th of July, over potato salad, I told him I was going to the bank on Monday. He said, "You're going to do that to me? Now?" I said, "It's been 2 years, Wade." And my father, at the counter, not looking up from the watermelon he was cutting, said, "Not today. I want you to hold on to that." My father's first move wasn't anger, it was scheduling. I said, "Then when?" And Wade came across the kitchen and took my wrist in one hand, the right one, hard, the way you'd take a fence post, and he turned and put me into the edge of the counter with his shoulder like he was moving furniture. The sound was not a movie sound. It was a small, flat, wooden sound. And then my hip and my ribs and my elbow all had opinions at once, and I was on the floor by the dishwasher, looking at the underside of the table. Nobody screamed. That's the part I can't get past. There were 11 adults within 30 feet, and the screen door banged, and somebody's kid was yelling about a sparkler, and nobody screamed. My aunt turned the water on. My cousin picked up a serving spoon. Somebody outside laughed at something in the yard. My mother came in from the porch and knelt down and looked at my wrist and said, "Oh, honey." And my father, still at the counter, still not raising his voice, said 6 words to my brother. He said, "Has anybody called it in yet?" I heard it. I remember hearing it and thinking it was strange the way a word goes strange when you say it too many times. Called what in? There was no radio in that room. There was no shift. There was a man with a watermelon and a knife asking a question that belongs to a completely different room, and I was on the floor, and it went past me like weather. Wade said, "No." And my father said, "Okay." That was all. That was the entire investigation. They took me in Dad's truck. Not an ambulance, a Silverado with an air freshener shaped like a pine tree and a scanner bolted under the dash that he never took out when he retired. 40 minutes to Kettle Valley Regional. My mother sat in the back with me and held my wrist above my heart with both hands, which was, I want to be fair, the correct first aid, and she said the sentence. Your brother has a career. Then you fell. Say you fell down the stairs. I said, which stairs? She said, the porch stairs coming down. You had a plate in your hands? She had picked a plate. Do you understand? In the 4 minutes between the kitchen and the truck, my mother had chosen a prop. I want to tell you about the triage nurse because I have thought about her every day since. She took my vitals and asked my name and my birthday, and then she looked over the top of the monitor at my mother, who had followed us all the way back through the double doors and into the bay, and was standing at the foot of the bed with her purse held in front of her like a shield. And the nurse said, perfectly pleasantly, Ma'am, I'm going to need to ask her a few questions alone. My mother said, I'm her mother. The nurse said, yes, ma'am, alone. And there was a pause. I would give a year of my life to have back. And in that pause, my mother did not move, and I watched a small door open behind that nurse's eyes. She was young. She had a lanyard with a cartoon cat on it, and she was writing. My mother went and stood in the hall where she could still see me through the gap in the curtain. The nurse said, Can you tell me what happened? And I said, I fell down the stairs. I said it in my own voice, in my own mouth, and I felt it land somewhere and stay. She asked me twice more, 2 different ways, the way they're trained to. She asked if I felt safe going home. She asked who was in the house. She had a laminated card clipped to her badge, and I know what's on that card because I have read that same screening tool in 300 medical records, sitting at my desk, on the clock, for strangers. And every single time I said the same thing, because my mother was 6 feet away in the hall with her purse. The doctor came in at 10. He was maybe 60, with reading glasses down his nose, and he turned my forearm over under the light for a long time without saying anything. Then he said, Down the stairs. I said, Yes. He said, He let go of my arm, and he typed, Fracture of the distal radius, contusions, a goose egg above my right ear where the counter's edge caught me, and a concussion, mild, with a printed sheet about screens and sleep and memory that I did not read for 5 days. They splinted me at 11:20. Discharged me at 11:52. My father drove us the 40 minutes home, and nobody spoke. And I remember that the scanner under the dash chirped twice, and he reached down and killed it with 2 fingers without looking, the way you'd turn off a song you didn't like. They put me in my old room. My mother brought me 2 Tylenol and a glass of water and stood in the doorway with the hall light behind her. She said, You did good, and she pulled the door shut. Here's what I want you to hold, because everything that happens over the next 11 days is built on it. At that moment, at 1 a.m. on the 5th of July, lying in a twin bed under a poster I'd hung when I was 14, I did not think I had been part of a cover-up. I thought I'd been in an accident my family was embarrassed about. That's how good they were. And in my good hand, on a phone with 8% battery, there was a voicemail 4 minutes and 12 seconds long from Wade, left at 2:07 that same morning, 17 hours before he ever touched me, that I had listened to exactly 1 minute of before I fell back asleep. I want to tell you one more thing about my mother's house, and I promise I'm not saying it for color. There are 4 steps up to that front porch. Concrete, no rail, poured by my grandfather, and my mother does not use them. She hasn't, for as long as I have been alive. She goes around the side, past the propane tank, up the little plywood ramp my dad built onto the back stoop, in through the mudroom, every time, coming and going, in every weather. When I was a kid, I thought it was her knee. Nobody ever told me there was anything wrong with her knee. I just decided that somewhere around age 7, the way children decide things, and then I never asked for 24 years. She had a plate in her hands, coming down the porch stairs. My mother had never come down those stairs in her life. I woke up at 7 on Sunday with my arm on fire and one clear thought: go home. My apartment, my bed, my coffee, my door that locks. My truck was where I'd left it, 3rd in the line down the gravel, sun already hard on the hood. I had my keys in my left hand and my sneakers untied because I couldn't tie them. My father's Silverado was behind me, not beside me. Behind me, backed in, tight, 6 inches off my bumper, nose out to the road, and the drive on that side of the house is bordered by the propane tank on the left and a drainage cut on the right, and a full-size truck fills it exactly. He was on the porch with coffee. I said, Dad, can you move? He said, sit down and eat something. I said, I'd like to go home. And he took a sip and looked out at the road and said, in a bit. I have been in the room when a man is told he cannot leave. I've read the transcripts. There's always a moment where everyone pretends it's hospitality. My mother came out through the mudroom, around the side, up the ramp, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and she came down into the gravel, and she said it again, the second time in 12 hours, and I want you to hear how she said it, because this is the part people get wrong. She wasn't pleading, she wasn't angry, she didn't argue. She said, "Your brother has a career," the way you'd say grace. Smooth, worn, a thing with the corners rubbed off it from being handled. She wasn't persuading me, she was reciting. And standing barefoot in my parents' gravel with a splint on my arm and my father's bumper against my tailgate, I understood. Not the whole thing, not yet, not by a mile. But I understood that I was hearing something that had been said in that yard before. So I took out my phone. I said, "Wade called me at 2 o'clock yesterday morning. Did he tell you that?" My father did not move, but something in his face went very still, and I would like you to notice that this happened before I pressed anything. I put it on speaker and I turned the volume all the way up and I let my brother talk in that yard. He was drunk. You could hear it in the consonants. There was a truck door in the background and a dog and the particular hollow of a man standing outside a bar at 2 in the morning talking into a phone he isn't holding right. Hey, don't, okay, I know what I said. My mother's face did not change. My father set the coffee down on the porch rail. "You want your name off the truck? Fine. Take it off. Take it off. That's not," a long breath, "that's not what I'm calling about." Wade laughed then. It was a terrible sound. "You know what Dad said to me at the shop? He goes, 'You're going to be a sergeant in 11 days. Don't screw it up.' 11 days. Like it's a countdown. Like it's a..." My cousin's kids were in the yard behind the house. Somebody's radio was on somewhere. It was 9:15 in the morning on the 5th of July, and my brother's voice was going out over that gravel at full volume, and my parents were standing in it, and neither of them told me to stop. That's what I want you to notice. For the first 2 minutes, nobody moved. "You're the only one who ever asks me anything," Wade said. "You know that? Jolene doesn't ask me anything. Mom doesn't. Mom doesn't ask anybody anything. That's her whole And then his voice changed. It dropped. It got slow and careful the way drunk men get when they've arrived at the thing. "Can I tell you something? Can I tell you something and you don't put it anywhere?" My father came off the porch. He didn't run. He came down the 4 concrete steps my mother does not use, and he walked past me, and he got in his truck, and he started it. Wade said, "You remember when I was in high school and you were little, you were still in that room with the..." And my father put the Silverado in gear and backed it out onto County Road 9, and the gravel popped, and he stopped in the middle of the road with his window down. 2 minutes and 41 seconds. That's where it was. I looked at the screen later. 2:41 into a 4-minute and 12-second message, my father moved a 2.5-ton truck out of my way, which was the one thing he had refused to do for 20 minutes. He said, "Stop it there." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Your mother can't hear the rest. Now, I need you to sit with the shape of that sentence with me, because I did not have time to, standing barefoot in that gravel, and it took me days." He didn't say turn it off. He didn't say I'm not listening to this. He didn't say your brother was drunk and you're being cruel. He said your mother can't hear the rest, which means he didn't need to hear it. He already knew what was in the last 90 seconds of a message that was left on my phone at 2 in the morning by a man who was standing outside a bar alone. I got in my truck. My mother was still standing in the gravel with the dish towel. She did not look at my father. She did not look at me either. She looked at the porch. I drove 2 miles down County Road 9, and I pulled into the gravel turnout by the culvert where the school bus used to stop, and I sat there with the engine running and the AC on my face, and I played the last 90 seconds of my brother's voicemail. I'd like to tell you it was clean. It wasn't. He was outside, and there was wind on the mic, and a truck went by, and he was chewing half his words. But here's what's on it. I have listened to it 400 times, and I can give it to you. "You remember when I was in high school and you were little, and I came and got you, and we sat in my car in the driveway. Do you remember that? You were like 6. You don't remember that." A breath. That wasn't nothing, that was wind, a truck. You know what he said to me on the phone? I called him before I called anybody. I called him before anybody, and he didn't. And his voice broke open, and this part is completely clear. This part I could put in front of a jury. He didn't ask if she was breathing. He didn't ask if she was breathing. He asked if anybody'd called it in yet. That was the first thing out of his mouth. Has anybody called it in yet? And then he told me what to say. He told me the words. Wind. And you know where he got 'em? Wade said. Ask Mom what she told him in 90 Bani. And a truck went past, and the number is gone. It is gone. I have run it through 3 different programs. There is a truck on top of the year, my brother said. She was the one on the floor. She was the one on the floor, and he's the one who... And then quieter, and this is the last thing on the tape. Don't play this for her. I mean it. Don't play it for her. She doesn't know I was awake. Beep! I sat in that turnout for a long time, because here's what I had. I had my brother, 17 hours before he broke my wrist, drunk, telling me that some night, some year, he had called my father, and my father's first question had not been, is she breathing? My father's first question had been, has anybody called it in yet? And I had heard my father ask that exact question, in that exact order of words, in that kitchen, with a knife in his hand, 17 hours later, about me. It's not a phrase. Do you understand? Has anybody called it in yet? Is not a thing a father says. It's a thing a deputy says. It's the first question you ask when you are deciding whether a thing is going to become a record. My family has a sentence for the ER, and my family has a sentence for the phone. And I am a paralegal. And called it in means something extremely specific to me. It means, is there a call? So I drove home with a splint on my arm and one question in my head, and it was not who hurt me. I knew who hurt me. 11 people knew who hurt me. The question was, did somebody call 911 from my parents' house on the 4th of July? Monday morning I went to work because that's what I do, and because the alternative was staying in my apartment with my arm in a splint and my phone face down on the counter. The Kettle County branch of the District Public Defender's Office is 4 rooms over a title company, and it smells like carpet glue and burnt coffee. My desk is against the back wall under 4 beige file cabinets that have been there since before I was born. There are 1,100 open felony files in this office, and I know where every one of them is. The interoffice mail came at 9. In it, among the usual paper, was a 2-page letter from the district attorney's office, addressed to my supervising attorney. Subject line, disclosure, pursuant to Giglio versus United States. It concerned a deputy named Kirk Ansell. It said the DA's office had become aware of information bearing on Deputy Ansell's credibility as a witness, and that the office was providing notice of that information to defense counsel in every pending case in which Ansell appeared as a witness, and it attached the list of case numbers. There were 14 cases on that list. I read it standing up, I stamped it, I made copies, I walked it to the 14 files. It took me 40 minutes, and it was, I swear to you, the most boring thing I did that week, and I did not think about it again for 8 days. Then I went and knocked on Reed Calloway's door. Reed is the chief deputy public defender for our branch. He is 58, he has been doing this for 30 years. He has a standing desk he never raises, and he is the only person alive who has never once been impressed by my family. He looked at the splint. He said, sit down. I told him. All of it. The kitchen, the counter, the truck behind my truck, the ER, what I said to the nurse, the voicemail. Has anybody called it in? He listened all the way through without writing anything down, which for Reed is a decision. Then he said, okay, here's what I can do for you. He held up his hand and folded down one finger. Nothing. I said, Reed, Thea. He leaned forward. Your brother is a Marin County deputy. Marin County deputies work the Regional Task Force. The Regional Task Force files cases in this district. This office defends those cases. You work in this office. You touch one piece of paper about Wade Ingram, on this clock, with this letterhead, off this Wi-Fi, and the first thing the DA says, the first thing before hello, is that the Public Defender's Office manufactured a Brady claim to get its cases thrown out. And they'll be half right, and half right is all it takes. I said, I'm not asking you to file anything. You're asking me to know about it. That's the same thing. He sat back. Anything you do about this, you do as a citizen. Not as staff, not on this computer, not with my name anywhere near it. And Thea, and he pointed at the cabinets behind me, you should probably go count. I said, count what? He said, how many of ours he swore to? I went and counted. Wade Ingram had been the affiant or the arresting officer or the corroborating witness on 9 open felony files in that office. 9. Search warrant affidavits, field notes, 2 cases where his was the only account of what a man said in the back of a car with the recorder off. I stood in front of those cabinets with a drawer open and my hand on the rail, and I thought about it the way I think you'd think about it. If Wade goes down, those 9 go with him. 9 cases, 9 defendants who might walk, 9 victims who'd have to hear it again. And every single person in that DA's office would know that the paralegal who blew it up was the deputy's sister. Reed was standing in his doorway watching me. He said, "Now do you see the shape of it?" I said yes. I did not see the shape of it. I saw exactly the wrong shape of it, and I carried the wrong shape around for 8 more days. And I want to be honest with you about that, because when I finally saw it right, it was not because I was clever. It was because I was cornered. My mother called at 12:40. I let it go, and she called again at 12:41, because that's her. I picked up in the parking lot. "How's the arm?" "It's broken." "I know it's broken, honey. Are you taking the Tylenol?" Pause. "Listen, the 15th. The ceremony's at 10, at the courthouse in the rotunda, and they want families there by 9:30. Your aunt's coming." I said nothing. She said, "You'll come. You'll sit with us." I said, "Mom," and she said, "It'll look strange if you don't." That was it. That was the whole reason. Not because you love him, not because he's your brother. It'll look strange. I hung up and I sat in my truck and I looked at the date on my phone, July 6th. 9 days. At 4:50 that afternoon, from my personal laptop, on my own hotspot, sitting in the parking lot of a Casey's General Store, I sent my first public records request. I sent it to the Marin County Sheriff's Office, Records Division. I asked for any 911 call record, recording, or computer-aided dispatch entry associated with 2 telephone numbers, my mother's cell and my father's cell, on July 4th, 2026. I was so pleased with myself. I want you to understand that. I sat there in that parking lot with a fountain drink sweating in the cup holder, and I thought, I know how to do this. This is my job. They have 3 working days. I hit send at 4:50. My phone rang at 4:58. It was Jolene. "I need to tell you about my sister. Jolene is 38. She has worked as a dispatcher for the Marin County Emergency Communications Authority since 2016. She took the console job the same year my father put in his papers. And if that means nothing to you yet, hold it, because it is going to mean everything. She pulled into the Casey's lot 11 minutes after I sent that email. She did not get out of her car. She rolled the window down and waited for me to come to hers, which is a thing our family does. She said, "What are you doing, Thee?" I said, "How do you know I'm doing anything?" She looked at the highway for a second. Then she said, "I checked. There was no call from that house that night. Nobody called 911. It didn't happen. You're remembering wrong. You hit your head. You've got a concussion. They gave you a paper about it. Read the paper." And she put her car in reverse. I said, "Jolene, I didn't say anything about a call." She stopped. For about 2 seconds, my sister sat there with her foot on the brake and her arm out the window, and neither of us said anything at all. And then she said, "Get some sleep." And she drove away. I want you to count with me. I had sent a records request 11 minutes earlier from my personal laptop on my own hotspot to an agency my sister does not work for. And I had not told a single human being on this earth that I was looking for a 911 call. I got up at 6 the next morning and did the thing I should have done first, and the only reason I hadn't is that I was scared of it. I logged into the hospital's patient portal and pulled my own chart. You can do this. Anybody can do this. It's your record. It's about 90 seconds and a password reset, and there is not one thing your family can do to stop it. And it is the reason I am talking to you right now instead of lying face down in my own life. Here is what my chart says, and I'm reading it. I'm not paraphrasing. Under mechanism of injury per patient, fall down exterior stairs while carrying object. Per patient. That's the phrase. That's the doctor with the reading glasses telling the future exactly how much he believed me. He didn't write patient fell. He wrote per patient. He put my name on it like a chain of custody tag. This is hers. I'm just holding it. Then in the physical exam, right wrist, ecchymosis in the distribution of digits, encircling. Right forearm, contusions over the ulnar border consistent with defensive posture. Right temporoparietal scalp, hematoma with linear component. In the distribution of digits, that's finger marks. That is a doctor writing in the permanent record in Latin that somebody's hand had been around my wrist. And then at the bottom, patient's reported mechanism not concordant with examination findings. Patient screened per protocol on 3 occasions, screening negative. Family member remained at bedside until asked to step out and remained in visual proximity thereafter. Patient declined to elaborate. Remained in visual proximity thereafter. He saw her. The doctor with the reading glasses saw my mother standing in the gap in the curtain, and he wrote it down in a chart at 10 o'clock at night. And then he went and saw the next patient. And I have never learned his name. And then there was one more line, and when I read it, I put the phone down on my kitchen counter and stood there with both hands flat on the counter for about a minute. Injury referred to law enforcement per state statute. Marin County SO notified July 5, 2026, 1:14 hours. Reference MCSO 26-3110. The hospital reported it. I lied. I looked a nurse with a cartoon cat on her lanyard in the eye, and I lied to her 3 times, and it did not matter, because in this state, a nurse who has a reasonable suspicion doesn't need my permission, and doesn't need my cooperation, and doesn't need my truth. She just needs to pick up the phone. It's not her opinion. It's her job. There's immunity attached to it, so she can do it and be wrong and still be fine. At 1:14 in the morning on July 5th, while I was asleep in my old room under a poster I hung when I was 14, somebody at Kettle Valley Regional called the Marin County Sheriff's Office about me. There was a report, there was a case number. There is a piece of paper in this world with my name on it and my brother's name on it, and I had never been told it existed. I sat in my truck in the hospital parking garage on the 3rd level for 20 minutes. I couldn't drive. I want to tell you it was rage, but it wasn't yet. It was this. My lie did not work. I gave up my whole self in that bay. I gave that nurse the sentence my mother wrote for me, and I gave it in my own voice, and I carried the weight of it home. And for what? For nothing. The report went out anyway 3.5 hours after I said it, which means my mother in the back seat of that truck, holding my wrist up above my heart with both hands, coaching me. She wasn't even protecting Wade. She was performing a ritual that doesn't work. That has never worked. That somebody taught her a very long time ago. I filed a records request for MCSO 26-311. Oh, that same morning. Incident reports are public in this state once a case is closed, and I had a feeling about how closed it was going to be. It came back Wednesday morning in my inbox at 8:31, 2 pages. I've got it in front of me. Reported, July 5th, 2026, 1:14 hours. Source, Kettle Valley Regional, ED, mandated report. Location of occurrence, 1402 County Road 9. Involved party, 1. Ingram, Thea M., DOB, mine. Involved party 2. Ingram, Wade H. Narrative. Report received from hospital staff, possible assault. Attempts made to contact complainant. Complainant declined to cooperate. No suspect interview conducted. No physical evidence collected. Case closed. Disposition. Exceptionally cleared. Victim declined prosecution. Date closed, July 6, 2026. Reporting/clearing deputy, Sergeant D. Utley, number MA, his badge number. Read that again with me. Attempts made to contact complainant. Complainant declined to cooperate. My phone number is on the first page of that report. It's in the box. I looked at it. It is my correct phone number. Nobody called me. Not once. Not a voicemail, not a text, not a knock. I have the call log. I have the whole month. Somebody wrote a sentence that said, I refused, closed a case about my own body in 38 hours, and went home. Sergeant D. Utley, Dale Utley. He was my father's partner from 1994 to 2010. He came to my high school graduation. He gave me a card with a 20 in it. That was the moment the shape of it started to come up out of the water. And I want to be precise about what I understood and what I didn't. I understood. My family is not hiding this from the sheriff's office. I did not yet understand. The sheriff's office is where they hide it. On Wednesday afternoon, the Marin County Sheriff's Office put a post on its Facebook page. Blue background. The Star. Please join us Wednesday, July 15th at 10 a.m. in the rotunda of the Marin County Courthouse as we recognize the promotion of 5 outstanding members of this agency to the rank of sergeant. Refreshments to follow. In honor of our nation's 250th year. Second name down, Wade H. Ingram. 206 likes. My aunt commented a row of American flags. And my mother had already told me where to sit. There's a thing that happens to my family in a group text. They get formal. They start writing like a church bulletin. Thursday morning, in the thread that has all of us in it, my mother wrote, Wednesday 9:30 at the courthouse. Wear something nice. Thea, your father will pick you up if you want. Your brother has a career, and this is a big day for this family. Third time, in writing, with a timestamp and a delivery receipt and her name on it. I screenshotted it. I didn't know why. I want to be honest. I did not have a plan. I was a woman with a broken wrist screenshotting her mother because some part of my brain that has read 4,000 text message exhibits said, "Save that." Jolene replied with a heart. And then Wade texted me, just me, not the thread, one line, 11:04 p.m. "You know I love you, right? No question mark. Nothing else." He didn't say sorry. He didn't say it happened. He said the one sentence that asks you to hold the whole bag for him. I didn't answer. Thursday, July 9th, 7:40 in the morning. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter while I was trying to get a hair tie around a ponytail with one hand. Marin County Sheriff's Office, Records Division. Ms. Ingram, in response to your request dated July 6, 2026, please be advised that a search has been conducted and there are no records responsive to your request. This request is now considered closed. No records responsive. I sat down on the edge of the tub. I want to tell you what actually happens in your head at that moment, because if you have never been on the receiving end of an official sentence, you will think you'd be angry. You are not angry, you go quiet, because there are only two possibilities and you have to hold them both. 1, they are lying to me. 2, there is no call and there never was a call and my sister was right. And then a third thing gets in, and this is the one that nearly finished me. I went and got the discharge paper, the one about the concussion. The one I hadn't read for 5 days. Following a concussion, you may experience difficulty concentrating, sensitivity to light, irritability, sleep disturbance, and difficulty forming or recalling memories, including memories from the period surrounding the injury. I put my head against the wall of my bathroom. Here is what I had if you take away the call. I had a man in a kitchen saying a strange sentence I might have misheard while I was on the floor with a head injury. I had a drunk voicemail about a night in a year that a truck drove over. I had a mother telling me to say I fell, which, if I'm honest with you, and I am trying to be, a lot of families would do out of nothing but plain stupid shame. And I had my sister, who works at the 911 center, who has no reason to lie to me about a thing this size, telling me, "You're remembering wrong. You hit your head." Do you know how much easier my life gets in that version? Do you know how good that version tastes? In that version, I am not a woman whose family covered up her injury. I'm a woman with a concussion and a grudge about a truck loan. I got in my car. I drove out County Road 9. I got all the way to the mailbox at 1402 and I stopped. I sat there with the engine running and the mailbox out my passenger window, and I looked at that house, bunting still on the rail. Wade's F250. My F250, legally my name is on that title, parked in the grass. I was going to go in and apologize. I want you to know that. I was 30 seconds from walking up those 4 concrete steps and telling my mother I was sorry for the thing I made her stand in the gravel for. And I sat there long enough to watch my mother come out of the house. She came out the back, around the side, past the propane tank, down the plywood ramp, in her own house, with nobody watching, with nobody there to see. A 64-year-old woman walking an extra 40 feet in the July heat to avoid 4 concrete steps that she has told me and told a hospital and told her own daughter in the back of a truck are exactly the kind of stairs a person falls down. And I thought, nobody's knee is that shy. I drove back to town. I didn't apologize. I want to tell you what happened at the red light at 3rd and Grand, because I've been to therapy about it since, and my therapist calls it a reframe, and I call it the worst 4 seconds of my adult life. I was sitting at a red light rereading that email on my phone at a dead stop. No records responsive to your request, and I was reading it as a fact about the world. And then I read it as what it actually is, which is an answer to a question. And I have spent 6 years teaching young lawyers that when an agency says no records, the very first thing you do is not despair. The very first thing you do is check whether you asked the wrong agency the wrong question. Because no records responsive is not a statement about reality. It is a statement about your sentence. And I had written 2 sentences. I had asked the Marin County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office does not answer 911 calls in Marin County. The Marin County Emergency Communications Authority answers 911 calls in Marin County. It is a separate legal entity created by intergovernmental agreement in 2009 with its own board, its own budget, its own records custodian, in its own building behind the county annex. The Sheriff's Office is one of the agencies it dispatches for. It is not its parent. It does not hold its records. I had mailed my request to a building that has never, in its existence, been the custodian of a single second of 911 audio, and I had mailed it into the records division of the sheriff's office, which is the same sheriff's office where my brother works, where my father worked for 26 years, where Dale Utley closed a case about my body in 38 hours. I asked the wall whether there was anything on the other side of the wall. And the second sentence was worse, and this is the one that made me put my hazards on and pull into a bank lot. I had asked for records associated with my parents' cell phone numbers. Computer-aided dispatch does not index events by whose phone it was. It indexes by location. An event gets an address. A 911 call from a cell phone in a rural county comes in with location data and a callback number, and if the call is abandoned in 11 seconds, there may be no name on it at all. No complainant, no reporting party, nothing but an address, a time, a phone, and a disposition. If my mother called 911 on the 4th of July, that record is not filed under Lorna Ingram. It is filed under 1402 County Road 9. I asked the wrong agency in the wrong index for a thing under a name it would never be under. They didn't have to lie to me. That's the thing that still takes the top of my head off. Nobody in that records division had to do one dishonest thing. The answer they sent me was completely, technically, perfectly true. No records responsive wasn't the wall keeping me out. It was the shape of the wall. It was the wall's outline, drawn for me in an email at 7:40 in the morning for free. Okay, pause with me. I want you in the comments on this one. Before I tell you what came back, how many times do you think one house can call 911 and have nobody come? Give me a number. Just a number. Don't scroll ahead, don't be clever, just put the number you'd have said if you were standing in that bank parking lot with me at 7:52 in the morning on July 9th with a splint on your arm and 6 days to go. I would have said 1. I wrote the second request in a booth at the Wagon Wheel on 3rd Street with a coffee I never drank, on my own laptop, on my own hotspot, at 9:15 in the morning on Thursday the 9th, and it is the best piece of work I have ever done in my life. It was 4 sentences long. It was 4 sentences long on purpose. Here is the thing nobody outside my job knows. In this state, a records custodian has 3 working days to respond. 3. But they can take 7 more if, and only if, they certify in writing that extenuating circumstances exist. And the statute tells you what counts. Broad scope, voluminous request, records in storage. A field request requiring collection from multiple sources. Every one of those extensions is a door, and every door is opened by size. So I made it too small to extend. To the custodian of records, Marin County Emergency Communications Authority. Pursuant to the State Open Records Act, I request the following. 1. The CAD event report for any event at 1402 County Road 9, Marin County, between 1935 and 1955 hours on July 4th, 2026, including all narrative, callback, and disposition entries. 2. The audio recording associated with that event. 3. The user access log for that event. This request is limited to a single location and a 20-minute window and does not require collection from multiple sources or retrieval from off-site storage. I will accept records in any electronic format and will pay reasonable fees up to $50. One address, 20 minutes, 3 items. You cannot certify extenuating circumstances on a 20-minute window. You'd have to put in writing that pulling one event out of a system that pulls up one event in 4 seconds is voluminous. And then that certification is itself a public record, and I will have it, and I will read it out loud somewhere someday. And then, on a separate form, in a separate envelope, I filed a second request. Everything at that address, any event, any disposition, 1993 to present. That one is huge. That one they can extend. That one they can drag. That's why it was separate. You never let the big request touch the small one. The big one is a truck. You park it. The small one is a knife. You carry it. Number 3 is the one that changes everything, and nobody ever asks for it. The user access log. Every time somebody in that building opens a CAD event on a terminal, the system writes a line, user ID, date, time, action. It has to. Those systems live under criminal justice information rules, and the audit trail isn't a courtesy. It's the price of being allowed to have the terminal at all. I did not ask for the access log because I suspected my sister. I asked for it because I ask for it in every case. It's on my checklist. It has been on my checklist since 2021. It's the 17th line. I drove it to them myself. I was not going to email it. The authority sits behind the county annex in a low tan building with no sign except a number, and there's a counter with a window and a bell. The clerk was a woman in her 50s with a cardigan on in July because those rooms are kept cold for the servers, and she read my 4 sentences with her lips slightly moving, and then she looked at my splint, and then she looked back at the paper. She said, "You want the access log?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Nobody asks for the access log." I said, "I know." She did not smile at me. She did not wink. Nobody in this story is going to help me. I want to be very clear about that because I know how these stories usually go, and there is no kind stranger coming. She stamped it. Received. July 9th, 2026, 4:20 p.m. She wrote a fee estimate on a sticky note. $10 for the disc, 25 cents a page. She gave me a copy with the stamp on it and said, 3 working days, in the voice you'd use to say a store closes at 9. 3 working days from a Thursday afternoon is Friday, Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday the 14th. The ceremony was Wednesday the 15th at 10 in the morning. I had built myself a 1-day margin, and I want you to know that I did not do that on purpose. That's just where the arithmetic landed. I walked out into that parking lot at 4:26 in the afternoon, and my sister's car was in the second row. Jolene works nights. She had no business being in that lot at 4:26 on a Thursday in her own clothes. She saw me. I know she saw me because she stopped with her hand on the door of her car, and we looked at each other across about 60 feet of asphalt. She didn't say anything. She didn't come over. She turned around and walked back inside the building. Friday, 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown local number. Ms. Ingram, this is the authority. I'm calling about your request. We're going to need you to clarify the scope. I said, which part is unclear? A pause, paper. Well, you've asked for an event at a location. We'd need you to tell us what event. I said, if I knew what event, I wouldn't need the record. Another pause. And then, and I could hear it. I could hear the man reading off something somebody had handed him. It would help us if you could broaden it out. Say, give us the whole day and any related... Broaden it. They wanted me to broaden it. Do you hear it? 24 hours instead of 20 minutes. 2,000 events for the county instead of 1. Related agencies instead of 1 address. Suddenly it's voluminous. Suddenly it's multiple sources. Suddenly there's a form on a desk that says, extenuating circumstances, signed, dated, 10 working days. And 10 working days from Friday the 10th is the 24th of July. 9 days after my brother becomes a sergeant. I said, no thank you, I'm not amending it. And I want to make sure we understand each other. A request for clarification doesn't stop the clock. Your response is due Tuesday. He said, ma'am, I said, I'm sending you this in writing in the next hour so we've both got it. And I hung up, and I did. And I timed it, and it took me 38 minutes. Reed Calloway was standing in the doorway of the break room with a coffee while I typed the last of it, and he read it upside down off my screen, which is a thing he does. He didn't say good job. He said one thing, and then he walked away. He said, they only stall when it's there. That was Friday morning. Friday night, my father came to my apartment. I live on the second floor of a fourplex on Bellamy Street. There's an outside staircase up to my door. He didn't knock hard. He knocked the way a man knocks when he's been knocking on doors for 26 years and doesn't ever need to knock hard. I opened it with the chain on. He was in a clean shirt. He had his hat in his hand. He looked, I swear to God, like a man who'd come to fix my sink. He said, "You gonna let me in?" I said, "No." And he nodded like that was fair, and he leaned his shoulder on the frame, and he said, in the most reasonable voice you have ever heard in your life, do you know whose desk that report lands on? Not a threat. Say it out loud sometime. There's nothing in it. There's no verb pointed at me. He didn't say I'll do anything, and he didn't say you'll regret it. And if you'd recorded it and played it to a jury, 12 people would have shrugged. It's a question about geography. And it is the single most frightening sentence anybody has ever said to me, because it's not about what he'll do. It's about what the county is. It's a man telling you kindly that the building you're mailing your life into is a building he worked in for 26 years, and that the paper you're so proud of has to cross a desk, and there is always a desk, and he knows every man who ever sat at one. I said, which report? And my father smiled at me. He actually smiled. He said, that's my girl. Then he did the other thing, and I did not see it coming, and it is the closest I came in 11 days to going down. He took a folded envelope out of his back pocket and held it up between two fingers. The title. My name is on that title. He'd had it in the safe. He said, "Your brother'll sign it over Sunday. Clean. He'll refinance in his own name in 90 days or he'll sell it, and either way you're off it, and you get the equity. That's, what, 11 grand? 12? He turned it over. You wanted this handled. This is handled. Do you understand what he was doing? He was giving me the thing I asked for at that potluck. The exact thing. The entire original argument, resolved in an envelope, in my father's hand, at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Take it, and there was never a reason. Take it, and the whole night in the kitchen becomes a family disagreement about a truck that got worked out the way things do. He was paying me with the object he broke my wrist over, and he was doing it so gently. He was doing it like a favor. I said no. And that's when he stopped being reasonable. And I want you to listen to how he stopped. Because he did not raise his voice. He did not step forward. He did not touch the chain. He put the envelope back in his pocket and he said, "You're not pressing charges, Thea. You already told them you fell. You told a nurse. You told a doctor. They wrote it down. They've got it in a computer with your name on it. You put it there. Nobody can undo that but you, and you're not going to, because then you're the liar." He put his hat on. "So there's nothing to find. There never has been." There never has been. I asked my father about 11 days. He answered about 30 years. He was on the second step down before I understood what I'd just been handed. And I stood in my own doorway with the chain still on, and I did not move for a long time. Sunday afternoon, Wade came. He came alone. He was sober, and that was worse. He had on a t-shirt, and he'd shaved, and he looked like a man who'd been awake since Thursday. And he stood at the bottom of my stairs and didn't come up. And he talked to me from down there in the parking lot like he needed the distance to be real. Here's what he didn't do. He didn't say it happened. 11 days and my brother never once put a verb in a sentence with himself in it. What he said was, "What do you want me to say?" I said, "That's not a real question." He said, "It is, though. Tell me the words. I'll say 'em. You want me to say it in front of Mom? I'll say it in front of Mom. You want me to say it to your face, on video, whatever, Just tell me what you want, and I'll say it, and this stops." And I stood up there and looked down at my brother, 42 years old, offering to read from a card. I said, "Wade, who's the person who tells you what to say?" And his face did something I had never seen it do. Then he said, "Dad already knows what you asked them for." I said, "Asked who for?" And he stopped. And he stood there in that parking lot and he heard it, and I watched him hear it. Because I had not told my father one word about the authority. I had not told my mother. I had not told a soul on this earth except a woman in a cardigan behind a window and a man on the phone Friday morning. And my sister. Wade got in his truck, in my truck with my name on the title, and he left. I called Jolene at 4:40 that afternoon. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail, which is a thing I have never once in 31 years had happen with my sister, because she is a dispatcher and dispatchers answer. I didn't leave a message. At 4:52, my phone lit up with a text from her. 1 word lowercase, no punctuation. Don't. I stared at it for a long time, because that word is not, "there was no call." That word is not, "you're remembering wrong." Don't is what you say to somebody who's about to find something. Monday, my mother came. She came at 11 in the morning with a Tupperware, and I hate that I have to tell you that, because it's such a small, stupid detail, and it's the one that gets me. Chicken and rice. She'd made it the way she makes it when somebody's sick. She stood at the bottom of my outside stairs with it, and she said, "Are you going to come down or am I coming up?" I said, "Come up." And my mother looked at those stairs. 12 wooden steps with a rail on the right, and I watched my mother look at them, and I watched something happen in her whole body. Her shoulders came up about an inch, and her hand went to the rail and stopped 6 inches short of it. And then she said, in a completely bright voice, "Is there a back way? I'll come around the back." There is no back way. It's a 4-plex on Bellamy Street. There's 1 staircase. I said, "There's no back way, Mom." And she stood there for maybe 4 seconds, and then she came up. She came up those 12 steps one at a time, both feet on each step, like a toddler, 64 years old, holding a Tupperware of chicken and rice, with her hand on the rail so hard I could see the tendons. And she did not look down once, and when she got to the top, she was breathing like she'd run. She handed me the Tupperware, and she said, "Your brother has a career." 4th time. Standing at the top of a staircase she'd just climbed like it was a cliff. I said, "Mom, when's the last time you went up a set of stairs?" She looked right at me and she said, "Don't be smart." We sat at my kitchen table for 40 minutes, and she talked about my aunt's knees and the ceremony and what I should wear and whether the courthouse air conditioning would be too cold. And I watched my mother's hands the whole time, and there is a thing about my mother's left wrist that I had looked at my entire life without ever once looking at it. It doesn't sit right. It's got a little bulge on the back of it, a bump like a knuckle where no knuckle goes, and the hand comes off it at about 5 degrees wrong. When I was small, I used to trace it. She called it her bump. I thought everybody's mother had one. That's what a distal radius fracture looks like when nobody sets it. Mine is going to heal straight. Mine got set and splinted at 11:20 at night by a man with reading glasses who wrote down that he didn't believe me. Hers healed, however it healed, in a house at 1402 County Road 9, in some year in the 90s that a truck drove over on my brother's voicemail. At the door, she stopped and put her hand on my face. And this is the part I don't tell people, because they always want it to be a moment. She said, "You're a good girl." And she went down those 12 steps sideways, one at a time, holding the rail with both hands. Tuesday, July 14th, 2:40 in the afternoon, 3 working days to the hour. The clerk in the cardigan slid a manila envelope through the gap and a paper sleeve with a disc in it. And she turned a ledger around and put her finger on a line and said, "Sign there, and the date." I signed with my left hand. It looks like a child's signature. It's on that ledger forever. She said, "1075. I gave her $11 and she counted a quarter back into my palm. She said, "Have a good one." And she closed the window, and that was it. That was the whole ceremony. 30 years and 11 seconds and a woman in a cardigan saying, "Have a good one" at 20 of 3 in the afternoon. I made it to my truck. I didn't make it out of the lot. The disc went in the dash player because my truck is 14 years old and still has one. And I want you to appreciate that the only reason I heard my mother's voice that day is that I have never been able to afford a new vehicle. Track 1, 11 seconds. There's a beep, and then a woman's voice, flat, professional, bored, the way you'd say it 400 times a shift. 911, what's the address of your emergency? And then my mother, low, fast, under her breath. The voice you use in a house where somebody can hear you. 1402 County Road 9. And then a man's voice, not on the phone, off to the side, close, calm, one word, "Lorna." And then nothing. 3 seconds of nothing. You can hear a room, you can hear a screen door somewhere in it. You can hear 11 people's 4th of July going on in the background of my mother's silence. And then the line goes, 11 seconds. I sat in that parking lot with my hands in my lap. My mother called. My mother, who held my wrist above my heart with both hands for 40 minutes and rehearsed me like a script and said, "Your brother has a career 4 times in 11 days. My mother, at 7:44 in the evening on the 4th of July, while I was on the floor by the dishwasher, went somewhere in that house where she thought nobody could hear her and dialed 911. She got out the address. She got out the whole address. She was going to do it. And my father said her name. That's all he did. He didn't take the phone. He didn't yell. He didn't touch her. There is not one sound on that recording that anybody could ever call a crime. He said her name the way you'd say it across a table. And 30 years of something came down on my mother's chest like a garage door, and she hung up. Track 2 is 51 seconds long, and it's the call back at 7:45. Marin County, returning a call from this number. And my father, "Yeah, sorry about that." Easy, warm, a little laugh in it. "That's my wife. She sat on the phone. Got the whole yard out here. It's a zoo." A pause. No, we're all good out here. Everybody's fine." And then he said the part I will hear on my deathbed. 26 years, hon, I know how it goes." And the dispatcher laughed. She actually laughed. Because that's a man on the other end of the line saying, "I'm one of you. I've sat where you're sitting. Don't spend a unit on me." And it worked in under a second and a half. And I do not blame that woman for one thing, and I will never forget the sound of her laughing. "All right, sir. You have a good 4th. The narrative line in the CAD report is 13 words. Callback, spoke with homeowner, advo accidental dial, no assistance needed, no unit dispatched. Now here's the thing they gave me for free, and this is the part where I want you to understand that I did not outsmart anybody. I asked for one event in a 20-minute window, and they gave me exactly what I asked for, exactly, honestly, and completely. And that is what ruined them. Because when you print a CAD event report, it prints with a premise history. That's not a favor. That's not a leak. It's a safety feature. It has been in every dispatch system in this country for 30 years for one reason. When a deputy is rolling to an address at 2 in the morning, he needs to know what has happened at that address before. It prints on the same page. You cannot pull the event without pulling the history. They are one document. And when the authority was stood up in 2009, it took custody of the county's dispatch records. Somebody had to hold them. And they migrated the legacy logs into the new system, back to 1993, because the entire point of premise history is that it goes back. So, on page 2 of a report about 11 seconds on the 4th of July, under the heading Prior Events at Location, there are 6 lines. I'm going to read them to you. March 11th, 1997, 02:12 hours, 911 abandoned. Callback, spoke with resident, advised spouse fell on stairs, no assistance needed, no unit dispatched, cleared by Deputy H. Ingram. September 22nd, 2001, 0140 hours, 911 abandoned. Callback, spoke with resident, no assistance needed, no unit dispatched, cleared by Deputy D. Utley. June 13th, 2004, 23:18 hours, 911 open line. Callback. No answer. Second callback. Spoke with resident. No assistance needed. No unit dispatched. November 26th, 2009, 0031 hours. 911 abandoned. Callback. Spoke with resident. Advanced child dialed accidentally. No assistance needed. No unit dispatched. August 4th, 2013-22. 06 hours, 911 abandoned. Callback. Spoke with homeowner. No assistance needed. No unit dispatched. February 19th, 2016. 118 hours. 911 abandoned. Callback. Spoke with homeowner. No assistance needed. No unit dispatched. 6 times plus mine from the same house over 29 years. Same phrase every time. No assistance needed. And not one unit. Not one. Nobody ever drove out County Road 9. In 29 years, in a county with 31 sworn deputies, no vehicle was ever dispatched to my mother's address. You gave me a number back at that red light. I asked you for one, and I told you I'd have said one. The answer is 6, and the reason it's 6 and not 60 is not that it only happened 6 times. It's that 6 is how many times she got to the phone. Look at the first one again. March 11th, 1997, 2:12 in the morning. Advocate spouse fell on stairs. Cleared by Deputy H. Ingram. My father took the call back at his own address on his own shift and cleared it himself and typed the words, spouse fell on stairs into a county computer at 2 in the morning in 1997 when I was 2 years old and asleep down the hall and my brother was 13. You know where he got him? Wade said. Ask Mom what she told him in 90. He didn't get it anywhere. He wrote it. The sentence my mother said to a nurse in an emergency room some night in the 90s. The sentence she said to me in the back of a truck on the 4th of July, holding my wrist above my heart, in the voice you'd use for grace. My father typed that sentence first, into a form, as a public record, about her, and then he handed it down like a name. He taught it to my brother in 2001 over the phone at 1:40 in the morning, and my brother taught it back to him 25 years later in a kitchen full of casserole. And my mother carried it in her mouth for 29 years like a stone she'd been told to hold. And on the 4th of July, she opened her mouth to put it down. She got out 1402 County Road 9. And my father said her name, and she put it back. She's not the wall. Everybody in that house is behind the wall. She's the only one who ever called out. The last page they gave me is a table. User access log, event 26-0704-00312. 2 lines, Jingram. July 5th, 2026, 9:14:22, Event View. Jingram, July 9th, 2026, 16:31:08, Event View. 13 and a half hours after my mother tried, my sister sat down at a console and opened it up and read it. And then she drove to a Casey's General Store and told me there was no call. That log tells you how my sister knew there was a call. It does not tell you how she knew I was looking for one, 11 minutes from my own hotspot to an agency she doesn't work for. And I carried that around for a week like a live wire. Nobody read my mind. The records division at the sheriff's office is 4 desks in a room off the back hall, and one of them belonged, for 16 years, to Dale Utley, who came to my graduation and gave me a card with a 20 in it. My name came up on a screen in a building my father worked in for 26 years, and somebody picked up a phone. There is no conspiracy in my county, and there never needed to be one. There's just a short hallway, and everybody in it goes to the same funerals. And on the 9th of July, 5 minutes after she watched me walk out of that building with a stamped receipt in my hand, she went back inside and opened it again. She didn't leak anything. She didn't alter anything. She couldn't. That log is why she couldn't. She just looked and said nothing for 11 days to a woman with a broken wrist who was sitting on the edge of her bathtub reading a sheet about memory loss and wondering if she was losing her mind. That's not a lie you tell to protect your brother's career. That's a lie you tell because if the 4th of July comes out, so does page 2. My sister has been sitting at that console since 2016. The calls stop in 2016. I don't have to prove why. I don't want to. There's a version where my mother stopped dialing the year her daughter started answering the phones, and I've decided I'm never going to ask because there's no answer to that question that anybody in my family survives. I want to tell you what I did next, and it took me 11 minutes to decide, and I made the decision in that parking lot with the engine off. I did not call the sheriff. That's his building. I did not call a lawyer. I work with lawyers. I know exactly how long a lawyer takes. I did not press charges because, and my father was right about this, he was right about the only thing he ever said to me. I told a nurse and a doctor that I fell, and they wrote it down, and a case about my body was opened and closed in 38 hours by a man who came to my graduation. My family had spent 11 days playing one game. Will she press charges? Every move they made, the truck in the drive, the title in the envelope, the Tupperware. Don't. What do you want me to say? Every one of them was a move in that game. They were so sure. They knew the whole board. They knew that a case starts when a victim says go, and my father sat on my stairs and told me, "You're not going to, because then you're the liar." They never once considered that I wasn't playing it. At 4:10 that afternoon, I walked into the office of the district attorney for the 16th Judicial District, which is 9 minutes from my apartment, and prosecutes every case in Marin County and every case in mine. And I put a packet on the front counter. In it, a copy of my emergency department record with the mechanism line and the exam findings and the mandated report and the timestamp. A copy of MCSO 26-3110, closed in 38 hours, complainant declined to cooperate, cleared by Sergeant D. Utley with my correct phone number printed in the box, and my call log for that month attached showing nothing, the CAD event, the audio, the callback, the premise history, and the access log, and a copy of a voicemail file, 4 minutes and 12 seconds, left at 2:07 a.m. on July 4th, 2026, which is legal in all 50 states, because the man who left it knew he was being recorded, seeing as he was the one recording it. And on top, one page signed by me, not a complaint, not a request, notice. On July 4th, 2026, I was injured by Deputy Wade H. Ingram of the Marin County Sheriff's Office. I gave the emergency department a false account of my injury under pressure from my parents. I am correcting that account in writing. I am not requesting that anyone be charged. I am providing this to your office because Deputy Ingram is a witness in pending cases in this district. And under Brady and Giglio, your office has an obligation to evaluate and disclose information bearing on the credibility of a testifying officer. That evaluation is yours, not mine. This is notice. I got a date stamp on my copy at 4:18 p.m. At 4:40, I stood in line at the post office on Grand and sent the same packet certified, return receipt requested, to the district attorney personally. At 4:51, I emailed it to the Brady compliance address, which is published on their website for anyone. 3 ways: a stamp, a green card, and a server. Because there is exactly one thing my family knows how to do, and it is to make a piece of paper never have arrived. You want to know the joke? I never had to prove Wade hit me. I didn't have to win anything. I didn't have to beat him. A citizen with a broken wrist cannot convict a deputy. But a district attorney who has been told, on paper, with a date stamp, that one of his officers has a documented credibility problem, that man has a constitutional obligation, and it isn't to me, and it isn't to Wade, and it can't be dropped, and it can't be settled, and it does not care one bit what I want. I didn't put my brother on trial. I put him in a file. Wednesday, July 15th, 9:52 in the morning. The rotunda of the Marin County Courthouse is a round room under a dome with a floor of gray and white marble that has a compass rose in the middle of it. And on the 15th of July, there were flags, the state, the nation, the sheriff's colors on a stand, and folding chairs in 11 rows, and a table with a coffee urn and a sheet cake, and a program on every seat. Reese, I want to talk about the program for a second. It was printed. Cardstock, folded, county seal on the front. They'd been printed the week before, because that's when you print a program. 5 new sergeants, and the names in order. Second one down, Wade H. Ingram. My family was in the 3rd row. Aunt Deb, 2 cousins, my mother in her navy dress with the buttons, and my father beside her in a jacket in July, and Jolene on the end in her uniform because she'd come straight off shift, looking at the floor. I sat at the end of the 4th row, one back and to the left, where I could see the sides of their faces. Nobody said anything to me. My mother turned around once and looked at my splint and then at my face, and she gave me a small nod, and I understood exactly what that nod meant. It meant good. You came. It doesn't look strange. At 9:58, my mother reached forward over the back of the 2nd row, where the promotees were sitting in their dress uniforms in a line, and she smoothed my brother's collar with 2 fingers. She did it without thinking about it. It's the most natural thing in the world. Every mother in that room did some version of it that morning. The sheriff came out at 10:04. He talked for 6 minutes about the 250th year of the Republic and about service, and then he picked up a folder off the podium and said, "All right, let's do this." The undersheriff had the stripes on a little tray, like rings at a wedding, and the sheriff read the first name, and a man stood up, and the room clapped, and the sheriff pinned him and shook his hand, and the man's wife took a picture with her phone up over her head. Second name. He read the 3rd. I want to be careful here, because I have played this back more times than the voicemail, and I need to give it to you exactly as it happened, without 1 ounce more drama than it had, because it had none. That's the whole point. It had none. He didn't read Wade. He read the 3rd name, and a woman 2 chairs down from my brother stood up. The sheriff pinned her, the room clapped. He moved down the line, and he came to my brother, and my brother was standing. He'd stood up when the woman stood up, because that's what your body does when it's your turn, and you've been waiting 11 days, and your mother just fixed your collar. And the sheriff stepped past him. He didn't look at him. He didn't hesitate. He took 1 step to the left in front of the next man, and he read the 4th name. 4 seconds. That's what I've got. I counted it later against the video my cousin was shooting, because my cousin was shooting video, because it was a big day for this family. 4 seconds of my brother standing at attention in a dress uniform in a marble room with his hat under his arm, while a man he'd worked for since he was 24 read somebody else's name 18 inches from his shoulder. Nobody screamed. Nobody stood up. 11 rows of people, and not one of them stood up. And I want you to know that I felt the whole shape of my life close into a circle in that second. My mother looked at her program. I watched her do it. She looked down at the cardstock in her lap, and she found the line. Second one down, Wade H. Ingram, printed, right there, in her hands, a fact. And she looked back up at the sheriff, and she turned to my father, and she whispered, and I could read it off her mouth. He skipped it. And my father, looking straight ahead, said, out of the side of his mouth, not moving one muscle in his face, "He'll come back to it." He did not come back to it. He read the 5th name. He pinned the 5th man. He shook his hand. He stepped back to the podium and he said, "Congratulations to the newest sergeants of the Marin County Sheriff's Office." And 11 rows of people applauded, because what else do you do? And my brother stood in that line, in the middle, unpinned, with a hat under his arm, and the applause went right through him. That's the reveal. That's all of it. Nobody said his name. There was no announcement. There was no explanation. Nobody read a charge. Nobody produced a document. Nobody stood up in the back of the room with a folder and pointed. Nobody in that rotunda knew one thing about a records request, or 11 seconds, or a woman in a cardigan, or page 2. The sheriff of Marin County had gotten a phone call from the district attorney the night before, and I don't know what was said, and I will never know what was said. And I have thought about it, and I think it was probably about 90 seconds long and completely polite. And I think it went something like, "My office is evaluating whether your deputy goes on our disclosure list. Until that's resolved, every case he's the affiant on is exposed. I'm told you're making him a sergeant on a stage in my courthouse in the morning. No sheriff on this earth pins that man. And here's the part I need you to have. He didn't do it for me. He'd never heard of me. He did it because of arithmetic. Because a deputy who can't testify is a deputy who costs money. My family sat there and watched a man not read a name off a piece of paper, and every one of them understood at the same instant, in total silence, that something enormous had happened somewhere else, in a building they didn't control, that they had not been consulted about, that had already finished happening before they put their good clothes on. That's what it looks like when it's over. My father looked straight ahead the entire time. His face never moved. He clapped when the room clapped. He clapped. My father applauded. And he kept his eyes on that podium like a man watching a road. And my mother looked at my father. She didn't look at Wade. She didn't look at the sheriff or the program or the door. She turned her head and she looked at her husband's face for a long, long time. And I sat one row back and to the left. And I watched my mother read him the way you read a weather sky, and I saw her arrive at something. The undersheriff came down the side of the room during the applause and put his hand on my brother's elbow, gently, gently, the way you'd guide an old man, and took him out a side door, and the door had one of those hydraulic closers on it, and it took about 4 seconds to shut. Refreshments to follow. Before I tell you the last part, the part in the hallway, I want to say one thing, and then I'll be quiet. I never got an apology. I want you to hear that now so it doesn't ambush you later. 11 days, 30 years, 6 calls, and not one person in my family has ever said the word sorry to me. And I have made my peace with the fact that they are not going to. If you're waiting for that, and I know a lot of you are, you're in the comments of every one of these stories waiting for it. I want to tell you what I learned standing in that rotunda. You do not need them to admit it. That's the trap. That's the whole trap, and they build it when you're 4 years old. They teach you that the thing you're owed is the confession, so that you'll spend your entire life going back to the one room where the confession lives, asking and getting so close, and coming home empty over and over forever. I never got an admission out of one of them. Not my brother, not my father, not my sister, not one. I didn't need one. It turns out none of it was ever in their mouths. It was in a computer. It was in a chart. It was in a one-line CAD narrative typed by a man at 2 in 1997. So if there's a boundary in this, and I think there is, it isn't a speech. I never made a speech. I never said one word to my family about any of it, not on the 15th of July, not since. The boundary is that I stopped asking them to say it. The rotunda emptied out in about 10 minutes, the way a room does when nobody knows what to say. The coffee urn stayed full. My aunt took the cake. My mother came out into the east hallway and sat down on one of those wooden benches they have outside the courtrooms, the ones with the backs worn down to bare wood in the middle where 100 years of people have leaned. She had her purse on her knees. She was sitting very straight. My father was still in the rotunda, standing under the dome by himself, in his jacket, in July, looking at nothing. I sat down next to my mother. I didn't say anything about Wade. I didn't say anything about the ceremony. I didn't ask her a single question because I'd stopped asking. I took out one earbud and I held it out to her on my flat palm. She looked at it for a while. Then she took it and she put it in her ear, and I want you to understand that she did that. Nobody made her. She could have gotten up. I played her the last 90 seconds of my brother's voicemail. The part my father backed a 2.5-ton truck out of my way to stop. The part he had said, in my parents' driveway, in front of both of us, out loud. Your mother can't hear the rest. She heard her son, drunk, at 2 in the morning outside a bar say, I called him before I called anybody, and he didn't ask if she was breathing. He asked if anybody'd called it in yet, and then he told me the words. She heard him say, you know where he got him? Ask Mom what she told him in 90. And she heard the truck go over the year, and I watched my mother's face, and I want to tell you something. She didn't need the year. She heard him say she was the one on the floor, and then she heard her son say, quiet, at the end, the last thing on the tape. Don't play this for her. She doesn't know I was awake. My mother put her hand flat on the bench. 17 years old. That's how old he was in September of 2001. 17, awake in the dark, and she never knew he was awake. She never knew he made a phone call, and she never knew he went and got his 6-year-old sister and sat with her in a car in his own driveway until it was over. She has spent 25 years believing that whatever that night cost it to her alone, that her kids slept through it. That's the thing she bought with all of it. That's what the money went to. And her husband knew. Her husband has known since 2001, since the night his son called him before he called anybody, and the first thing out of his mouth was, has anybody called it in yet? And he stood in the gravel on the 5th of July and told her she couldn't hear it and made it sound like mercy. Then I played her track 1. 11 seconds. 911. What's the address of your emergency? 1402 County Road 9. Lorna. And the room. And the screen door. And the line going dead. My mother sat on a wooden bench in a courthouse hallway and listened to herself try. I'd been so afraid of that. I'd been afraid all night that I was about to hand my mother the proof that she'd failed. 11 seconds of a woman not finishing. That's not what she heard. She heard, "It's there." He told her it wasn't. He told her for 30 years. He told her nothing lands, nobody's coming. Do you know whose desk that report lands on? And every time she called, nobody came. And every time nobody came, it proved him right. And that was the machine. That was the whole entire machine. And it ran on her for 29 years. And it's there. It's in a county computer. It's on a disk that cost $10. There is a public record with a timestamp that says that on the 4th of July, 2026, at 7:44 in the evening, Lorna Ingram dialed 911 and got the whole address out. She tried. And a woman in a cardigan, and a stranger in a state archive, and the plain machinery of a county she has lived in her whole life have been holding the proof of it the entire time, for free, for anyone who asked. She didn't say sorry. I want to be so clear with you. My mother did not apologize. She has not said any of those words to this day, and she may never say them, and I'm all right. She took the earbud out and put it in my hand and closed my fingers over it. And then she stood up. And she looked down the hall, once, at the rotunda door, where my father was standing under the dome by himself in a jacket in July, waiting for his wife to come out and get in his truck the way she has come out and gotten in his truck for 43 years. And my mother turned the other way, and she walked out of the east door of the Marin County Courthouse with her daughter, into the parking lot, into the heat. She got in my truck, the old one, the one with the disc still in the dash. And I want to tell you about my father, sitting on that bench in the empty rotunda afterward, with the flags and the sheet cake and the coffee urn nobody touched, because a woman from the clerk's office told me he was still there at noon. He's not ruined. I want to be honest with you about that, because I know the ending you want, and I can't give it to you. He's 71. He's retired. Nobody is going to charge a retired deputy for a one-line narrative he typed in 1997. There is no court in this country that's coming for my father. He just doesn't get to say it anymore. That's it. That's the whole thing I took from him. For 29 years, my father had one sentence, and it worked on everybody. It worked on a nurse. It worked on a doctor. It worked on his son. It worked on his wife. It worked on a dispatcher who laughed. And now it's in 3 inboxes, and a green card came back signed, and there is not one thing on this earth that he can do about a piece of paper that has already arrived. He's still sitting there, is how I think about it, every day. He's still sitting on that bench. My brother is on administrative assignment. He has not been charged with anything, and he may never be, and I'm not waiting for it, because that decision belongs to a man in an office 9 minutes from my apartment who has never met me, and who will make it on Tuesday or in March or never, and it isn't mine, and it was never mine, and that's the only reason it worked. But he is a deputy with a disclosure file now, and that file doesn't expire. It follows him to the next county, and the next state, and the next application. And every single time he raises his right hand for the rest of his life, a defense attorney gets a 2-page letter with a list of case numbers attached. 9 of those case numbers are in the cabinets behind my desk. I go to work every morning and I sit under 4 beige file cabinets full of cases my brother swore to. And I know that sometime this fall, a letter is going to come through that interoffice mail with a subject line I've stamped 100 times. And it's going to have his name on it, and I am going to have to make copies of it and walk it to 9 files, and I am going to do that because it is my job. My second records request is still open. The big one. Everything at that address, 1993 to present. They took the 10 working days, of course they did, and then they asked for more, and I gave it to them, because I've got nothing but time now. They're going to send it. It's public, and whatever's in it, my mother's going to hear it first, because she's staying in my spare room, and she has not been back to 1402 County Road 9, and last Thursday she went up my 12 outside stairs carrying a bag of groceries without touching the rail once. She still hasn't said she's sorry. She said something better 4 days ago, standing in my kitchen with her back to me, doing my dishes, out of absolutely nowhere, in the middle of nothing. She said, "It was 11 seconds?" I said, "Yeah, Mom." And she said, "I thought it was longer."